going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. The world is filled with storytellers, and I, along with my guests, are here today in the Author's Lounge to help educate and inspire the young generation of writers and creators. Now, my guests are professionals in publishing, writers from a wide range of formats, and successful entertainers. They will provide beneficial advice on what to do and what not to do on your path to success. So, without further ado, I'll present to you our next guest. Let's go. Hey, first, let me say, Andrea Stewart, thank you so much for this connection right here. I am grateful that you were kind enough to be able to put me in contact with a companion of yours and someone who is equally as talented with the pen to paper as you are. And so I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. So today we have our guest who is he's a fantasy author of the book. Wait a minute, watch it. Let me see if I can get it. Duchess of Kokora. There we go. Got it right. Duchess of Kokora. Also,
We had some fun off-screen moments with that one earlier. That was
yes, we did.
enjoyable.
Yes, we did. One of the highlights to this book is that it was voiced over by an actress from the show Bridgerton. What is her name again?
Her name is Adjoa Andoh, and she plays Lady Danbury from the show, and she did a phenomenal job with the audiobook.
Yes, indeed. And also, speaking of his book also received some praise from Shonda Rhimes. Go a little bit about that.
To be clear, Shonda Land. Shonda Rhimes
Oh,
herself, I
oh
don't know if
no.
she said
Okay,
anything specific, but
don't worry.
Shonda Land, the studio, put some nice press out there on the book, which I certainly. Hey, listen, your lips to Shonda's ears. Truly, that would be amazing. But
Oh, thank you for that catch. No worries. I'm a little excited
appreciate
if you
it.
can't tell. Hey, but without further ado, I present to you all the wonderful Mr. Nikhil Prabala. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm not sure if I am as good a writer as Andrea, but I will take the compliment wholeheartedly
Okay.
without any shame or hesitation. But no, I'm definitely grateful to get connected and get the chance to talk like this.
Oh yes, and as he was mentioned earlier, we had some fun talking before recording. One of the things that I really love about this presentation is his freaking hair, man. Like it looks so good. It looks so good. And I know people who are only listening to the audio only version of this. I highly encourage you go and watch the video and check this man's
Wow.
hair out. It's on
Man,
point.
they're going to be really underwhelmed. Like, my hair is pretty good. I feel like you're really setting them up for a letdown. It's like, okay, that's nice, but like, okay, he's just a guy.
It's just a guy. Well, I
Just
mean,
a guy.
this is also coming from a guy who's bald, so you know, any style to a hairstyle is good to me.
Yes, that's fair.
Yeah, man. So let's go hop into it. So, Duchess of Kokora is how many books do you have in your catalog that's been published?
So, of my published, this is actually my debut. I have several other written, several works in progress, but this is actually my debut novel.
Hmm.
I met a bookseller, Birdhouse Books in Austin. Great outfit. If you're listening from there, and the owner there laughingly referred to those previous novels as pre-debuts, which
Yeah.
now sits in my head rent free as a way of referring to those past works. But
Hmm.
one currently published in my catalog with the sequel to come out next year, and potentially a few other works that are in the pipeline.
That's awesome. How do you even come up with ideas of this fantasy world? That's always my fascination when I talk to authors who are fantasy based, specific. Where do you come up with the I guess the concept of your book?
Yeah. So a lot of the time, mine come from dreams. Actually, I have very vivid, like almost lucid
Mm.
dreams. So very frequently, that will inform my writing in big ways. But I have found actually that for this book, at least, I so kind of the original idea came in the middle of COVID. I living alone, just finished a draft of my like epic dark space opera novel. I'm quite
Hmm.
proud of it, actually. I say that kind of jokingly, but I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
pretty. But it was one of those moments of like, man, I could really use a fun one right now. I could really use a lighter note in this sort of isolation experience. So
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking of funny ideas, and one of them was there are these manga, that kind of
Yeah.
style of like Japanese comic, but there's so many iterations of this very niche premise of like
Hmm.
someone who is like reincarnated into the world of a dating simulator, but they're
Yeah.
as like the rival antagonist character. There's like
Hmm.
10 different ones that are just that, and in one of them, that rival character had such like wild chemistry with the protagonist, with like nominal love interest. I'm like, wait, why aren't you guys together? And I sort of that one thing led to another. I thought of, how funny would it be for a woman to go onto a show like The Bachelor and
Hmm.
immediately, like, kind of like ignore the guy and immediately lean down on the couch and be so, hello ladies, that kind of setting. And I just chased after it. As far as
Hmm.
the fantasy world goes, a lot of that came from an old D&D character of mine. I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons
Wow.
guy. A
Yeah.
huge fan of that. A lot of this kind of like technophobic yet also like industrializing world and setting
Hmm.
came from that. So it ends up being a mix of different influences, and kind of the common thread throughout it all is that as I write, there is this kind of like, I don't know, essential humanity of every
Yeah.
character. And really, like, what determines the world more than anything are the
Hmm.
characters as they make choices that make sense to them and that
Yeah.
speak naturally to who they are as people. And
Hmm.
that will naturally influence how the world develops around them in my own reckoning, which is also a very Dungeons and Dragons like thing for
Hmm.
those who are familiar with the game.
Oh, for sure. You having dreams that then translate to stories makes going to sleep exciting. Like some people, so there's so many, there's so much, I guess, complexity to wanting to sleep, and many people might want to go to sleep because they just had a hard day at work, or
Yeah.
it's been stressful, or it's been fill in the blank. But when you are a writer or a creator in your aspect, right, where a lot of your ideas are formulated from dreams, I can only imagine that it might be so good that you might not want to awake from the dream so quickly. Like, no, 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 wait.
Man, I've had some intense ones, like some really like, oh man, I was sort of in this. I had a life, I had a family. What happened? It gets wild. It gets really intense sometimes,
I
but
can't.
it's
I
it's
can't
good on the whole.
imagine. Yeah. And so, speaking of your book, right? So where should there's so many ways I could go with this. So when you're world building, right? Once you take it from your dreams and you put it on a paper, how do you describe the world in such a way that it is actually seen vividly for readers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the question of detail, right? How,
Okay.
how, how do you make detail work for you and not against you? And there's spectrums here and different philosophies. You can go all the way to the George R. R. Martin school of like, everything needs to be on the page. I think, don't get me wrong, love George and his work.
Yeah.
But it's its own side of the spectrum. And then you got like the Hemingway school of thought, like as sparse as possible, as little as possible. I find what works best for me and what works, I think, most compelling for readers is what I refer to as like sense memories.
Mm.
When I'm reading, I don't need to know everything about a place, a moment, a feeling, but I do need a feeling. I do need like
Yeah.
something rich to anchor me in individual moments, and then my own imagination will fill in the rest. I don't need to know
Yeah.
every bit of what it was like to be in this marketplace, but I just need like one or two like sense memories to
Hmm.
anchor me in the scene and the emotion, and you can do that with. I think generally fairly choice selections of imagery, being somewhat reserved, somewhat discreet, and okay, I'm
Yeah.
just going to give a quick little like interesting flair on this place that's going to stick out in a reader's mind and bring them in a cool way. I find that to be the most effective balance.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Because me, in my poetic children's stories mind, when I go and I think of a book and a novel, and when I think of fantasy, and there's so much. There's so
Yeah.
much that goes into it, and some people are plotters, some people are pantsers, and I can't begin to imagine if a pantser goes into a world of fantasy and trying to do that. So for you, when you go and you write your stories, are you more of the type that, hey, you know what? I had this dream. I don't need to sit down and plot out an entire storyboard. I'm just going to go with the idea and let's shoot. Or do you plot altogether?
I don't plot. I go full on. Hey, we're gonna figure out what this story is about
Hmm.
as we write it. We're gonna discover who these people are, what
Yeah,
makes them tick, what's going on here. It does mean there's a little bit more drafting involved.
for
And in
sure.
fairness, like it because I've written so many manuscripts in my life, I think that's part of why I'm able to effectively do that. Well, once you've done
Right.
that enough times, like the initial instinct around
Hmm.
what makes sense will be a little bit sharper. I'd recommend trying both for those who
Yeah.
are kind of figuring out what works. Like and I have tried both. It's worth doing to know what really makes sense for you, what really
Yeah.
draws out the best of your writing. But in general, no, I have a few ideas. Maybe I'll jot down a little scene here and there, a little
Hmm.
moment here and there, something evocative. Sort of like I'll have a sort of some touch points. So I'm like, oh, I know we're heading in that direction. I
Yeah.
know we're going to get to this moment at some point, or I know this. But I generally avoid kind of hard and fast outlines, especially in my first drafts. Editing is for making it look like you meant to do everything you did in your
Right.
manuscript. Editing is making it look intentional, but
Hmm.
it's totally fine to go in from the start. I find that for me at least, it makes the characters and their interactions and the plot feel more organic.
Yeah,
There's
for
some
sure.
richness, and there's also things you discover, and that's an amazing part of the writing journey is the discovery of realizing,
Yes.
oh no, this is actually that dynamic, or this is actually the plot in this moment. This is more interesting in this
Yeah.
place. But
Was
maybe that'll change with time.
maybe, but like who you are as a person and how you're able to almost be, in a sense, a discovery writer, if that's even a thing. It's there's something beautiful in it. I'm similar in that regards, right? When it comes to writing, that
Mm.
I struggle when it comes to trying to plot. My mind goes everywhere
Mm.
except on the paper, and I
Mm.
just have immense difficulty with trying to create a story off of plotting. So being a pantser and just kind of go and shoot, just give me an idea and roll with it. You just never know yourself where the story is going to take you. You don't have an idea. You might have a thought that, okay, I want the story to end like this, but I don't know how we're going to get there. Or you just don't even have an idea of how the
Yeah.
story is going to end until you get that feeling. So when you finished your book, right? What was the telltale sign that I'm done? Like, what was that moment?
Well, I mean, there's the book ends in a particular way. I won't spoil that here.
Yeah,
For
thank
people who
you.
might be interested. And it comes with a cliffhanger for book two. So don't expect a clean resolution in book one because we're absolutely continuing this, entering out into the wider world. I mean, for me, it's one of those act structure things. You can sort of sense
Mhm.
it. Like, yeah, we sort of hit the plot ended, like the big moment ended, and here's the big ending,
Mhm.
and this is the appropriate stopping point. This is where the drama sort of kind of naturally lived. It's like when
Yeah,
you watch the season finale of a show, you're like, okay, yeah, that was like the right kind of place to be, in ending this particular arc of the story. I will say
yeah.
a lot of things do change from draft to draft. The ending of the book never has. In this case,
Uh,
my ending has actually been the same from the start.
yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. My beginnings changed quite a bit. I think every
Mhm.
draft I had a new opening intro scene, but the ending when I got there, I'm like, no, this is how this has to go. This is the right direction. It's one part intuition, one part kind of knowledge of story
Mhm.
structure. You sort of know it when you see it after a certain point.
Yeah. You know, you have such experience, right? You had mentioned you had many work in progresses, these are manuscripts that you've written, but this one being your official first published book.
Yeah.
How long have you been a writer altogether?
Gosh, I started when I was 15, actually. So
Okay.
in the summer before my sophomore year, high school, actually. It's, I mean, in some ways, we're storytellers our whole lives.
Yeah.
When we say writer, when did you actually put pen to paper and try it? For me, it was we're getting a remodel done on our house, and
Hmm.
in the middle of a Texas summer, the unthinkable happens. It rains, so the house is flooded. The roof's taken off, so the house is flooded, and I'm in a motel for like 3 months with free time, my dad's old laptop, and nothing really else to do. And I don't know, books have always meant so much to me. They were always how I
Yeah.
understood the world, how I navigated emotions, especially during
Hmm.
difficult times. And I just got started. I had a story in my head for a little while. I was also, I had a story in my head for a little while, and I finally went for it. I chased after it. I wrote that first novel. I finished it. I shared it around, and honestly, that book was bad. Like no, I say this with no illusions, no deprecation. Like it was not a good book, but that's not what it needs to be, right? Your
Right.
first is always your hardest. It's always
True.
your worst. Like and that's completely normal, completely acceptable.
Hmm.
And the important thing about that first one is that it teaches you that you can do it. It
Right.
changes your sense of what is possible in your own
Hmm.
life, in your own writing career, and it begins you on that journey. And it really is a journey. It really is a long haul kind of career over the last 12
Yeah.
some years since then. I've grown and changed in so many ways, and even my writing, my personal life, and yeah, I would certainly advise to any listeners out there who are thinking of writing a book, absolutely do it.
Yep.
Don't worry about it being good or perfect. Chase it, make it something that you love,
Hmm.
and then be completely okay with the result because that's totally normal. There are a few people who write one book and it's actually kind of amazing
Yeah.
and they put it out. That is the exception. I want to be very clear. That is the exception,
Hmm.
not the rule. Like Brandon Sanderson has this thing, like you have to write 6 manuscripts before you're ready to publish your first. Because that was roughly what his was like. It's not literally 6, of course, but you have to have some experience. Then he jokes, except unless you're Patrick Rothfuss, in which
Yeah.
case you write one and you somehow manage to land it because you're a complete oddball in this
Hmm.
world. Lovingly, jokingly, of course.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
in general, that's been the journey, and that's part of it. So I've been at this for a little while, and on that
Yeah.
journey of failure and success and figuring it out.
I also really what I'm loving what I'm hearing from you, and what I absolutely without question respect is the determination to just believe in yourself and to continuously go. And that may be difficult, even starting out. And reading books is is unfortunately something that is not as prevalent as it once was because of
Yeah,
technology and all of social media and short videos, and it detracted from people's ability to want to read
yeah,
or to sustain it. But when you see that crowd of people, there's still a crowd of people. You can go to a bookstore like Barnes and Noble, and you still see a large quantity of people going there to shop for books. And I love the idea of physical copies. The
yeah,
physical copy in your hand is something about feeling your own work in your hand that is just such a gratifying feeling. Now, you
yeah,
had mentioned, oh, there it is. Can you show them, please? Can you show that book one more time?
yeah, yeah.
There it is, Duchess of Kokora, and then such a
It's really
beautiful,
nice.
beautiful cover, man. And
We have the sprayed edges
I,
edition right here.
yeah, Matt, where did you get that printed from?
So there's someone I work with on Etsy.
Yeah,
Gosh, I'm blanking. Tones and Pages on Instagram. They're
yeah,
incredible, do an incredible job. They also do all the merch for Penn Cole, another
mhm,
kind of romantic author in the space. Would highly
yeah,
recommend checking her work out. She really is a phenomenal printer. Does a great job. I'll share that information in our
yeah.
follow-up.
Yeah, I definitely would. If I can, yeah, if I talk to that person, definitely gonna get them even more exposure. If they, I'm not sure they
Yeah,
don't need it, but I would love to help in that regards.
absolutely, absolutely.
I have a love for fantasy, even though I'm not a fantasy writer. You talk coming from a dude who grew up playing Legend of Zelda and loving those games. You had mentioned Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
I was somebody who was more like on the. I wasn't like a PC gamer or anything like that, so
yeah,
that
yeah.
wasn't.
More
But I was
Nintendo. I get.
yeah, I was well aware though, like Dungeons and Dragon and World of Warcraft,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. But to kind of get back on track, what I was saying was that so before we were recording, you had mentioned you went to school, right?
Mhm.
Well, of course you went to school, but college. But did you in college? Were you going to college specifically for writing, or was it for something different?
No, I went to Stanford for my undergrad, but I studied computer science, kind of
Oh,
the
nice.
typical CS major in some ways. But I took creative writing classes, of course. But
Mhm.
fun fact about being a STEM major, they can't stop you from reading books. Like
Yeah.
the dean doesn't show up and smack a book out of your hand if you if they catch you reading. For me, it was like, hey, I like engineering. I like the creative side as well. I like all of these things, and ultimately, I
Hmm.
want a career that will support me while I work on these, many different facets of my life. And I
Yeah.
found that computer science was that kind of intersection of like, I like this, and it's the kind of thing I can do, and also write and pursue my creative passions.
Yes.
And I think in terms of classics, history, creative writing classes, whenever I could find time in my schedule, I would encourage anyone out there who's in that space in their education, like, yes, absolutely find an education that will support you, that will help you find work, meaningful employment that will support you, but like also make sure it's something you like. Don't just chase the thing that you think will make you money. Make sure that it can support you, but you also like it, and it hopefully leaves room for the other passions you have in life. Life is about so much more than just your career. You
Hmm.
need all of these things to be working if you want to lead a fulfilling life. And if you chase one purely at the detriment of all others, then you're going to be, I don't know. I think you're going to be missing out on a lot. I meet a lot of kids at Stanford who really had that. Like, I have had one ambition in life since I was a child. I've never really considered anything else, and they would hit walls. They would hit those natural,
Hmm.
like, life gets hard. Even when you're good at something, even when you're excelling at it, it gets hard. And not having those other foundations, those other pillars to prop you up, can have
Hmm.
pretty serious mental health impacts. And that's where we were talking about young people reading and sort of the dearth in readership these days. I think
Hmm.
reading books actually gives you a pretty strong foundation. It
Yeah.
connects you to the world. It develops your empathy. It gives you a sense of perspective.
Hmm.
Of course, you can't just read books. You need to also live in the real world and talk to
For
people. But
sure.
having those balance of things, right? Like, books really expand your own lived experience
For
farther
sure.
than what would have taken you otherwise. And
Hmm.
I think it is unfortunate that there are fewer readers out there, especially among boys and young men. We're really
Hmm.
seeing a a plummeting in reading rates amongst that audience in particular.
Yeah.
At best, they read nonfiction. Hey, remember, I love good nonfiction. I love good philosophy,
Hmm.
but there is something about poetry, fiction that is like nourishment for the soul in ways
Yes.
that a book on management is not going to give you. It might be important, it might be useful, but it's not going
Hmm.
to give you that thing that you really, really need. I will
Yeah.
say, I think we're headed for a pendulum swing on that. I think we're
For
headed
sure.
for a lot of people are realizing, hey, all this time on TikTok, all this time online, it is absolutely disastrous for my life, for my kids'
Yep.
lives. And I think we're seeing a pretty big backswing. So I think we will
Absolutely.
see that shift, but the cost is real.
No, for sure. And there's so many good points you said in that in those few minutes that you were speaking about it. I love the distinction that you made between your passion and a career, but making sure that your
Mhm.
career that you choose is something that you enjoy. Because many people go through school, or there's this idea, this fix that people are fixated on because of social media. This is more for the younger
Yeah,
demographic,
yeah,
like those in high school now, going into college or in that age range where they see influencers, they see people who are
gosh,
famous, they
yeah,
see celebrities, and oh, I want that, I must do this, and maybe they'll record things all the time in hopes that they can get monetized and be famous, and there is nothing wrong with that. However, for me, in my perspective, it certainly does seem like it is something that many people in the younger demographic, like 18 to 25, have gravitated towards, and it's kind of a hey, all or nothing type. And it works out for some it does not. But I agree with you in that notion of, hey, if you're going to go to school, at least let it, if you're going to be in a profession, allow it to align with something that you enjoy. Because some parents push education
yeah,
onto their children, and the children don't even want to do it. And maybe they grew up in a home where their parents
yeah,
were in law, or their parents were, I don't know, they were in medical, and they themselves don't want to do it, but because it was the family tradition, they do it, and they end
right.
up being miserable. So I love that piece that you were saying about the kids needing to. There's a benefit in wanting to find something that you enjoy at least, and then still fulfill what your passions are. That hopefully can turn into something lucrative. um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Maybe
but the other
both.
yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, but looks like I got a few minutes left. So let me see. Man, you are really easy to talk to. Just FYI, really cool, really nice to
Thank you,
speak with.
thank you.
Of course.
Likewise.
Yeah. So, with with your book, right? One of the things that we had spoken about earlier was you having that actor from Bridgerton voice over your work. So how did and I'm sorry I said that actor because her name escaped me. I know you remember the
All good.
name, but how did you work that out and how did that become a thing for you?
Yeah. So honestly, I emailed her agent. There was no particular. It's one of those you take a big swing, and sometimes they work out. I think a
Yeah.
lot of life is about putting yourself in the position where luck can matter.
Yeah.
Right? You can't rely just on chances, just on luck. You have to do enough so that when you are in that position to take that big swing, because
Hmm.
in this case, I was looking for British female voice actresses because I knew I wanted someone with that broad kind of background to narrate the work. And I'm going through an agency website and I see a photo and I'm like, you you look really familiar. Where do I know? And then I look up like, oh shoot, you're Adjoa Andoh, you're Lady Danbury in Netflix's Bridgerton. I'm like, oh my god. I listened to her Pride and Prejudice rendition. Fantastic, phenomenal. I mean, this woman is she's a one woman teledrama. I mean, she could
Yeah.
absolutely do her own full show with no issue. She's incredible. So I emailed her agent and was like, "Hey, is she available?" And the agent was like, "Well, generally no, but like, you know what? Send us the book. We'll take a look." And she liked it. She liked it well enough to like want to spend the time on the project. So, and it's wild being on an email chain where someone is like, "Oh yeah, I have a week before season 4 filming of Bridgerton starts. I can
Yeah.
I can make that work." I'm like, these things are even in the same conversation
Yeah.
is crazy to me. But yeah, it really was a moonshot in a lot of ways.
Awesome.
But that's the thing. Like you gotta put yourself in the position where those lucky chances
Yeah.
can matter. I think that's a huge part of life, and we often don't see it, right? Authors who like make it big, right? It's like no, it wasn't just a lucky thing that happened. They were writing a dozen books before this one breakout bestseller happened, and now they're
For
in the
sure.
most of what we see as lightning success is actually the product of many small decisions and
For sure.
disciplines over time. It's just harder to see, and
Hmm.
it can be discouraging if you don't see it because you can feel like, oh my god, the amazing things just happen to other people, but I'm just over here toiling. No, we're all toiling, and the thing
Yeah.
is like the toil is what makes what makes those lightning moments possible.
For sure. And it speaks to the stamina of the individual who's weathering the storm and who is really sticking to their tenacity and not wanting to give up. I guess it depends on the person and what they are wanting to achieve because some people get discouraged because they just aren't receiving any book sales. Some people are discouraged because they're not having enough attention, enough eyes on the book, or maybe somebody who's brand new into the scene just dropped their first
Yeah,
book and it blew up versus this person who's been doing it for, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 5, 10 years and there's still nothing.
yeah,
And so it becomes more of an internal, you just have to know that your time is coming and there's no telling when that time will come, but you do need to
you
be
can't.
persistent in it. Exactly, you have to be persistent
And
and you oh, go ahead.
no, comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Yes.
Whenever you're looking at other people, they're going, it's going to make you miserable, and you don't know. You don't know where life's going to take you. You don't know
Right.
if it's going to pay off or not. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. Virtually
Yeah.
every veteran writer, author, publisher, agent I talk to in the field is like, hey, this is not a one and done kind of career. This is you're committing to this for a long period of time.
Hmm.
That's just how it works, and it's
Absolutely.
important to have that perspective.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to storytelling, you need to tell stories that you want to tell. I think many people get caught up in this whole cyclone of genre specific is popular now,
Mhm.
is a trend. Let me write to this genre and so I can make a quick buck. But if you are not drawn to that story, like for example, for you right now, right? Fantasy is popping right now. And you
Yeah,
are an author who writes in the fantasy genre. It is not oh, you know what? Let me switch genres mentally and write a fantasy book. You that's one of your specialties, at least
yeah,
right now, that you do that. And so it works in the time. Somebody who writes nonfiction books who then decides, you know what? I've never written a fantasy book, but there must be money over there. So let me just write a fantasy book and let's see what happens. Yeah, I don't encourage that. For me, and I don't know if you agree, I'm pretty sure you might be of the same mindset of go where you feel you can one tell your truth in the story that you're telling, and then two, also it not feel forced. I feel like if it's an organic flow to the story you're telling, it will translate much better. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I encourage genre experimentation. You know, like try the fantasy thing, try
Mhm.
the thriller, contempt, whatever. Like expand and explore. Don't do it. Don't do it to chase the market trend. I would advise against that. I think none of us really know what does or doesn't do well in the market. It's kind of a wild goose chase in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Don't ignore your genre expectation. Don't ignore your readers. Like let that be a second or third or fourth or fifth draft concern. First draft, write something you love, write it with truth, write it with honesty, and let that through line remain through the drafts. Let that be the main thing. Now, if you want to, like, okay, I know readers of the genre prefer this or that, like, yeah, hone it appropriately. But no, I think you're right. If you have to be able to say something true in whatever work of art you put out there.
Hmm.
And however you get to that, whether it's from a particular genre, particular exploration, or if you find that, wow, I'm writing this thing I don't normally write and I
Hmm.
love it, then hey, amazing. Like
Yeah.
make sure that that love and that commitment to truth is there when you're writing the work. Otherwise, you're not actually going to do as well as you think.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect note to end it on. And so, well, hey man, Nikhil, thank you so much for coming to the show. Thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you.
yeah, yeah, you are awesome. I'm gonna let Andrew know actually after this. I'm gonna send her a message and say, hey, thank you. I just had to kill on and he was freaking he exceeded everything. I knew he was gonna be wonderful because she recommended you. But you're just so easygoing to talk to, and I'm looking forward to just continuing to stay in touch. I tend to reach out a lot to
Likewise.
people who I have on the show, especially if it was like
Yeah.
a natural chemistry.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like that.
Yes, sir. I'm supposed to be in the Bay Area. I think in February is when the conference is coming back. So I'm not going to wait, of course, until February to message you again. I'll be in
Yeah,
touch throughout the time. But
for
maybe
sure.
I could connect with you while I'm over there. I don't know how
I'd
far.
love that. I should be in town in February. I don't think I have other commitments right now.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it'll be at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Believe that's where they're going to have it. Somewhere.
I don't know if I'm attending the conference, but I'd love to hang out, grab a meal, whatever.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. And thank you
Of
all
course.
again for taking the time for tuning in to today's episode. Hey, you're live with Osiris and Nikhil. Oh, I almost say Nikhil. I've been saying it right the whole time. Nikhil Prabala.
Look,
Hey, got him. Catch you all next time.
it's
Take care.
good. Good. Take care.